Can you just clear up? I mean, there seems to be sunspot cycles, solar flare cycles. Is that the same thing? Is there a difference?
They're all connected. The sunspots appear in numbers according to the electromagnetic cycle of the sun. The sun has a kind of dark side, or like a dark inside. It's actually, if you were to look through at the sun, less in terms of the light, which is reasonably constant, and more in terms of a sound metaphor, then it's actually pulsing. It's vibrating and pulsing. And it has a web, an electromagnetic web, which extends out from its center all the way to the Earth and beyond. And that web is also pulsing. And there are cycles within that we simply don't understand. And they are short-term cycles, 11 and 22 years. There's a 70-year cycle. There's a doubling of that. And there are 400, 1,500, and possibly 5,000-year cycles in relation to the sun. And we simply don't understand what drives those cycles. But we can see that they're there, because if you go to lake sediments and ice cores, you can see the patterns, and they're harmonics that are repeating. Now, in fact, one scientist, not working with computers, but working with Fibonacci numbers, and he used to work very closely with NASA, actually, but I think he kind of got up their noses a bit, because they could not predict the amplitudes of these solar cycles. They're actually very important because they determine space weather, the kind of electromagnetic pulses that affect satellites, and it's very important economically to know what the sun is doing and when. Now he could predict the amplitudes of the cycles, and he could also predict another phenomenon in the Pacific called the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And the Pacific goes through periodic cycles which affect the weather of the whole planet. And again, there are economic reasons why it would be very good to predict when an El Nino is coming. And he could do that. And eventually fell out with the establishment and set up his own little research group. And in 2003, he wrote a paper in the international peer-reviewed literature. And so this is one man. But he's the only man on the planet who could predict El Ninos. And he said there will be a really big one in 98. He said that before 98. And in 2002, he predicted both of those El Ninos. And he said after 2002, that El Nino will mask a global cooling caused by a fall in the electromagnetic cycle of the sun, which he predicted. He successfully predicted that. And he said that the cycle that we're waiting for now, which is called cycle 24, will be delayed. Indeed, it has been delayed. And it will be lower than the previous one. Now, NASA are expecting it to come back up and be bigger, so we'll know in 3 or 4 years' time. But he was also right in another thing. He said, after 2002, you won't see any more El Ninos. You will get a condition known as the La Nina, where the Pacific Ocean is very cold. And he said eventually, by 2007, there will be a global cooling. It will be evident that the planet is cooling down. Now, he's spot on the money. And a year ago, I was writing in an ecological journal, and I said, well, 2007, the end of it, will be very interesting, because for the first time ever, the Hadley Center, with all of its massed computer ranks, has predicted for 1 year ahead. They've never done that before, to my knowledge. And they said, this year will be an El Nino year. They'd seen temperatures rising in the Pacific and thought, right, it's going to go off the scale. This will be the world record temperature, way above 1998, which is still the world record temperature. And so they were expecting El Nino and world record. What did we have? La Nina and global cooling by a huge amount. Now, they're calling that a blip in the general trend now publicly, but they're not drawing attention to their prediction paper that they made a year ago. Unfortunately, I published that. And I said, well, it's going to be very interesting.